Good afternoon, Harlem and Harlems of the world. I am Terri Wisdom, and I am your host for today. This is Harlem Network News, and for those of you who have just joined us, Harlem Network News is a new media platform, and we are on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Clubhouse, HarlemNetworkNews.com, and we are the voice and the drumbeat of Harlem. It has been quite an incredible week. I would like to start off by just saluting all those who served and transitioned in 911 September 11th, but particularly I want to salute our Black brothers and sisters who were a part of it, and major media acts like we are invisible, but we are not. We are still here. Check out our Harlem Network News newsletter, which came out yesterday. We salute 12 firemen and name them that passed away at 911, and also several pictures of others that passed in the World Trade Center, at the Pentagon, and also in Pennsylvania. So I'm here to say we are still here. Today, we are celebrating Grandparents' Day. And we have grandmothers on with us today. And I am honored to have my friends and my sisters and my roadies and my foot soldiers with me. Sandra Bell is here, and Reverend Rhonda McClean is here, and also Aissatou Bey Grecia is here, and she's got Elder Gabrielle by her side. So thank you so much. And in keeping with our wonderful tradition, we are going to start with a prayer, and Reverend Rhonda will lead us in a grandparents' prayer. So thank you, Reverend Rhonda. Thank you.
Thank you, Terri, and for all that are here, all that are part of this broadcast today. We thank you and welcome you. If you could just speak to that and to who you speak to be and get to your higher self. Speak to that right now. Father, Mother, God, Oludamare, all the names you were called by, we thank you, Creator, Divine Source, for another day to be in the mix. We thank you for Harlem Network News and Terri Wisdom, who see it not robbery to give information to our community. We thank you, God, for the mothers and the grandmothers. We particularly thank you for the grandmothers that are on this call. And we ask you to bless them and bless all the mothers and grandmothers out there. Grandparenting is not an easy thing. We thank you, God, for all that the grandmothers do and are for the children. In our community, so many grandmothers are rearing their grandchildren, and still with love and with patience. And we ask you to put a special hedge of protection around all those grandmothers who are being mothers 5 times over. We ask that you bless us in this space right now and help us to illuminate and elevate anybody that's listening. We thank you, God, for our health and our strength, because we know that there are those who died this morning of COVID, of heart attacks and cancer and stress. And we're thanking you for allowing us to be here, to have another day, to say another prayer, to help somebody along the way. We just thank you, God, for grandparents, grandfathers, and grandmothers who are making a difference in the world of their grandchildren. And we ask you to continue to bless us to be all that we can be, so that our legacies will continue to thrive and our grandchildren will know that they come from mighty, mighty, mighty powerful people. These are all blessings we ask. Amen, amen, and Ashe.
Okay, well, thank you, Reverend Rhonda. And as we know, especially now, much prayer is needed. This has been more than what I can say, a year of Black Lives Matter, of the COVID pandemic, which is now we're like a year and a half in. Our communities have been really hit the hardest. So these are extremely extraordinary times. I just want to say that we have special prayers for all of those who are transitioned because many continue to transition. One of our grandmothers was to come on and join us today, and that is our incredible mama. I call her Mama Aida. And I called her and she was unable to join us. So her uncle, who we had been lifting up in prayer, transitioned today. So she was on her way out to Queens. So we send out prayers for the uncle of Mama Aida. And, you know, unfortunately, he transitioned due to COVID. And my understanding is that he was vaccinated back in February. So we have a lot going on, and it is a time where we are really having to put everything to the test. All of the knowledge, all of the base, and for ourselves and the young people. So I will let you start, Miss Sandra Bell, in terms of what this grandmother experience has been for you. And it's also been, it's not so ironic, but all of you, we raised our children together. So we were mothers together, and now we're grandmothers together. So it has been quite a journey, and the connection and support has been what has really helped us to get through. In the tradition of our ancestors, it indeed takes a village. So Sandra, speak about the grandmother experience for the children, but we're also going to speak about what we as grandmothers are doing, because we definitely grandmas on the move.
Yeah, well, I discovered I was a grandma because I never thought of myself as a grandma, you know, and but my children have children, so I am a grandma, but I'm not a grandma in the classic sense of the word of that old grandma, that old-fashioned grandma that's you know, mostly stationary and you know, like basically taking care of everybody. So I had to grow into being like more of a little bit more of that kind of grandma, because I'm very active. So in terms of what that means to me, it means more of sharing my experience and the reality of life, and how we can sustain each other, and to remind not only the children, but the grandchildren that there's a legacy. And like we say in Trinidad, we didn't just drop from a tree. We came from something. We grew out of something. We came from somewhere, right? So my role, I see my role as a connector, as a perpetuator of our legacy, of the people before me, because there's a lot of what I call it interference, but a lot of lack of acknowledgement of where you're from, who you be, like they say, and you're sort of merged into this big conglomerate of, like, you know, like being American, but that doesn't really work for us. So I see the grandparenting as a role for the grandparenting as a perpetuator of the legacy, and giving a message, and really connecting them to who you are, who your ancestors and your father's fathers and your mother's mothers were. So that's in essence my role. And of course, you know, we try to have a good time, share my recipes, stuff like that.
Yes. All right. Okay. Well said. Mama Aissatou Bey Grecia, sister, tell us a little bit about your grandparent journey, and if you have any anecdotes and what it means to you, and how you roll with it. Thanks.
It's interesting. I had a little experience this morning, because I had just a a little talk with my eldest grandson, who's 25.
Mm.
And he's of course, been on the grandparent tip. He's been with me the longest. When he was born, his mom was in college.
All right.
And she was breastfeeding him. In fact, I used to have him on the stroller on 125th Street, and he had lots, as all of us did. And people used to say, "Isn't that Hannibal? Doesn't he go to Clark Atlanta?" He might have been 1.5. And I said, in fact, he does. So he used to spend a month with his mom and a month with me. And he just to go down the street. Yeah, he's been with me a long time. We traveled the world together. When he was about 4 months old, we took him to Hawaii. He spent a year with me, and him and his sister, they were 3 and 6. They spent a year with me in Ghana right after 9/11, in fact, for a year.
Wow.
We've had many journeys together. Of course, now he's 25 and he's having his own journeys. And I remember when I was when my grandmother was alive, she's one of my favorite people in the world. Her name was Maxine, and she was a glam mom. She wasn't a grandma.
All right now.
We called her Mama Mac. She was a glam mom. She was the first time I'd ever seen that. And so I remember, she was one. Then I had some other grandmothers, and they used to complain all the time when you came to see them about how you hadn't come to see them. Like, you would spend all your time with them saying, "Well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that." And I had to really promise myself that I wasn't going to be that kind of grandma. The kind that didn't complain, that you didn't spend all of your time when you saw them, about what they didn't do. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. And it's a constant battle, because we always do stuff that, we see, even though it irritates us. And of course, the older I get, the more I turn into the grandmothers of old. But I know better. And so I think, part of the grandmother thing for me is understanding grace and wisdom, and wondering why, like, grandmothers will make some will make that comment and some don't say much, and because what you cultivate, I think, in the grandmother realms is grace and wisdom. If you're conscious, and if you're looking. So I have 7 grandchildren, and I have and I have a great grand.
Yes.
One great grand. And they all came here different ways in different situations. But the one thing that's clear for me is, however they got here, God sent them. And they are absolute, true, without a doubt, blessings. And I learned so much from having them in my life.
Okay. Well said. A lot of food for thought. I think the other thing that we have in common is that we all had incredible grandmothers that we had relationships with. So that's something else that we have in common. And we also had glam mothers.
Oh yeah.
we had glam mothers. And for those of you who are just joining in, I'm Terri Wisdom, and this is Harlem Network News, and we are celebrating Grandparents' Day. And on that glam mother note, I'm just going to say one thing. When my mother, Myrtle, transitioned, God rest her soul, my sisters, Akake and Aisatou, were there immediately, and they were with me, and they helped me to plan the homegoing. And I do remember Aisatou saying, "Now you got to get the right purse, you got to get the right clothes, because you know how your mama rolls." So it's interesting, the traditions that we have and from whence we came. And even though they were grandmas and glam grandmas, because my grandma was glam too, it was just a place where they were on it. You know, they were on it. It was a time, we grew up in the time of the 50s, you know, where you had your hair combed, you had yourself together, you know, you had breakfast, you know, you were on a situation and a routine. And you understand that those were true rituals and traditions. And we're lucky to have that to pull from. And I'm in agreement with you, Sandra, that it's about passing it on so they know the shoulders and that they stand on something. Because especially now, that's extremely important. So Reverend Rhonda Akake, let's let you chime in on the grandma experience, because I think that you're the youngest grandma and had the grandchildren last. So share that with us, and you're the youngest among us as well. So thank you.
Well, I think I have decided that grandparenting is everything, and grandchildren are everything. I love my children. I love my stepchildren. I love all of them, but the grandparent role is a whole nother different level of love. I have 7 grandchildren.
All right.
I have, we have a blended family. So my son, who transitioned 7 years ago, had 2 children, and Ryan Russell. And then I have 5 other grandchildren from my stepchildren. And we had 2 who are identical twins who just came into the world 2 years ago. They're 2 now. And all the grandchildren live in different states, nowhere near me.
Wow.
So we had 5 of the 7, the older 5, a couple of weeks ago, and we took them to a resort, indoor water park. And I'm just gonna say, you would think that I was 15 or 6 or 7 left. The kids, they bring so much joy to me. And, you know, for my son's children, because he's not here and his daughter was 3 and his son was 6 weeks old when he transitioned. Like the other sisters, my role, part of my role with them is to help them to know who their father was, who their grandparent, they're close to my mother, who's their great grandmother, and to know their family history from our perspective, because his father's not here. So I spent a lot of time with them talking about ancestors and people who passed and people that are here so they can know their family. We also spend a lot of time doing activities that they like to do. And because I do activities that they like to do, then they're open to what I like to do. And teaching them about culture and history. And, you know, they take the African dance classes, or my granddaughter is interested in art. So I'm not an artist, a visual artist. But we were doing, during COVID, we were doing FaceTime art, sip and paint art. And had our easels and played our music. And so, and it became a thing. And of course, my pictures look nothing like theirs because those 2 are artists. And then my other grandchildren, whatever they might be interested in, we try to support, my husband and I, by, you know, getting them instrument or introducing them to the cultural life that we've lived and the spiritual life that we live, without forcing, but gently, you know, and try to provide the things that their parents might not be able to, or just are not, you know, because when you're raising children, you're trying to survive, you're trying to, you know, pay the bills. Not that we're not still trying to do that.
Yes,
but
yes,
we are still, but it's on a different level.
Right, it's not
with a little more grace and a little more patience, and We don't freak out when a bill doesn't get paid, you know, so we have a little bit more time and wisdom to be able to provide those extra things that their parents might not be able to do. So I'm just loving being a grandmother and being a grandparent together with my husband. I mean, he provides those parts that I don't provide. And it's just a journey that I'm having a ball with. Okay. So I'm excited.
Okay. Well, thank you. And this is Harlem Network News. I'm Terri Wisdom, and we are here celebrating National Grandparents' Day, which started in about 1970, and it's always the first Sunday after Labor Day. And so we're celebrating Grandparents' Day, quote, Harlem style, you know, and I consider it's like Harlem and Harlem's of the world, because I know we got somebody right here from the People's Republic, Brooklyn, which is Sandra. And Sandra, I want to go to you and just have you speak a little bit about your upbringing, because I know that you were born in Trinidad and you migrated here to America. I don't know if you came straight to Brooklyn, but I know that you had a special relationship and you have a special family and have a very much a connection to carnival and mass and all of those things. So if you would just share a little bit about that, because, you know, as you said, for us, grandparenting is about the culture and the understanding from whence we came. So please, thank you.
Right. So, you know, just a little background. I was born in Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidad specifically. And, you know, I grew up with my father's family, because my mom went to Venezuela to work and left me with her mother. And when my dad, he came, he was also working on a ship. He came and he saw the state I was in, run around with no pants on, my hair wild and all these things. He took me and snot running down my nose, etc. He said, oh no, I'm taking my baby girl to my mother. And that was it. So I grew up with them, and they're all artists on that side of the family. And my Uncle Ken Morris was the most famous of all, because he was a sculptor and a band leader, a costume designer. So I grew up in what you call a mass camp, a masquerade camp, which was my uncle's studio. So I saw every single kind of body come through there, from the prime minister to all the dignitaries that came to visit Trinidad and Tobago, because he was the one who was assigned to making gifts for everybody from Anwar Sadat to Pope John Paul, Princess Margaret, Queen Elizabeth, all those kinds of people. So he was the one. So you could imagine the traffic that went through that house there in Belmont. And so that's the environment I grew up in. And then my mother got really scared that she would never see her daughter again, and had to go to a lawyer to get me up here to the United States, which was a big tragic for me, because I love my grandma and I love my uncle, my auntie. Oh my God, it was so. Anyway, I had to make the transition. So I did, and here I am today. I mean, lots of things have happened since, you know, been in the film industry and always arts and entertainment though. And yeah, I discovered that I wasn't going to be an accountant or anything like that. So anyhow, so now I'm older, I'm more involved with the Caribbean community here in Brooklyn. I didn't used to be. I spent a lot of time working on all those shows in Manhattan. And that's where I've got my real training and my real professionalism. So now we have a group, Juve Fest. I'm part of the West Indian Day Carnival Committee here in Brooklyn. I'm heavily involved with Juve. We are the Juve lovers. And part of our mission is to tell the story of Juve, which is a story of resistance and resilience. And up to today, we're still doing that. And Juve has its own story because it came out of the emancipation of slavery and and the ability to say who we are, be who we are, play the kind of music we want to play, and dance how we want to dance. So it came out of a real big struggle for emancipated Africans in Trinidad and Tobago and in other Caribbean islands as well. So because there are Juves in mostly the French-dominated Caribbean islands, because the French were in Trinidad too, among other colonists. So it comes out of that struggle. Okay, we know you've got your balls, but we've got our way of doing this. So it was a big fight. They burned the cane fields down. There was a lot of battles. The police put a lot of people in jail. Does it sound any different today?
No.
Right. So I'm here in Brooklyn, and that's part of our mission. Our Juve Fest mission is to tell that story and to let people know that we didn't just jump in a band and wind up and play music. It came out of a real struggle, and we're still struggling today. So we just had our Juve Labor Day in Brooklyn, where they said there was no carnival, no band, but we did our own thing on the street, 6 of us, playing a little radio, going down the street in our costumes. We have other activities. We show movies now. We have workshops. We do things in the park with other groups. So the COVID especially forced us to come out of our perimeters, which I'm happy, because now we are aligning ourselves with other like-minded groups here in the United States. And also part of it, of our mission, is to take the story of Juve abroad, because to the African countries, because a lot of them don't know what's going on here with all of that. So that's part of our mission as well.
Okay, well, thank you, Sandra. And just speaking truth to power, and also knowledge is power. So you explained Juve, but what does the name mean, Juve? How did you get to it? When is it traditionally celebrated? And then we're going to go on to Aissatou Bey Grecia to speak a little more about culture and her journey. For her.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So as I mentioned before, it was a French colonization, or they tried to colonize Trinidad. And so the language, got blended. So the word Juve is the opening of the day, or I open, right? So this was the name that the emancipated Africans gave to this celebration, because it happened early in the morning, like 4 o'clock in the morning to sunrise, because at sunrise, guess what folks had to do? Go back and do whatever they do, cut cane, throw out the pot, cook food, whatever. So that was the time that they were allowed to have their celebration, because the French, they had these, the rites of spring and the beginning of the Lenten season. So from January 5th to Ash Wednesday, which the Pope designates when Ash Wednesday is, that was the carnival season, which included the rites of spring and all mixed up with the Catholic religion. So the French brought that with them. They would have their mass balls and whatever else they did during that time, got pretty drunk, etc. But the Africans were not allowed to do any of that. We had to serve them, but we couldn't. So this is how Juve came about. That's the beginning of Carnival. And that's the time of the year. The time between January and Ash Wednesday was the Carnival, the Carnavale celebrations. And then Ash Wednesday, midnight, what we say in Trinidad, party done. No more drinking, no more dancing, just praying and asking for forgiveness for whatever you did, especially during the carnival season.
Okay, all right. Teach, my sister. Love it. And I knew about Uncle Ken Morrison, but I didn't know about, serving Anwar Sadat or the Queen and all that. So thank you for sharing. It's always a history. Okay, Aissatou Bey Grecia, talk about your journey, your culture, from whence you came and how you brought it to the family, the children, the grandchildren.
Quarter mile, turn left.
Okay, so this is going to be an interesting story, because I'm not sure if any of even that you, who I've known you for a long time, know all of this. So I'm just, number one thing, I am from Cincinnati, Ohio, originally. That's where I was born, in Cincinnati. And I was born at the surprise of everyone in my family, including my mother, believe it or not. And my mother was an opera singer. Turn left onto Newpella Avenue. And she was an opera singer in her high school. She was Cincinnati, pretty segregated. And I'm talking now, I was born in 53. So it was segregated. We went to the black, of course, the black high school, Withrow. And my mom had a group of guys who shared in the opera with her.
All right.
In the 50s, I mean, and now I know why Ohio was such a music state. And it was because all the Eastern Europeans after the war had migrated to Ohio. Strangely, a lot of them did. And so the schools were inundated with music and art, specifically music, which is why Leontine Price, Jesse Norman, all those folk came from Ohio, right?
My God. Woo.
Because that was so by the time I was in the 6th grade, I was playing a musical instrument. And I played the bass violin because I had really big hands like my father. And when your mother's an opera singer, you dare not try to be an opera singer. So because I mean, for me, that was whatever was in my head. I've got a coloratura soprano that I'm living with. How could I possibly ever be that?
Okay. Right?
But I had the really good ear because I listened to, and my mom didn't listen to jazz. She didn't listen to gospel. We grew up in the Methodist tradition, the most boring music there is. Pardon if I offend anybody. But I grew up in the AME church, and the songs we sang were the arias and the hymns, and it was very in the operatic side. And that's what we knew, and that's what I knew. But I did listen to, Porgy and Bess, and all of the Broadway ones, the shows that had Black stories. She listened to those a lot. Then we also listened to Showboat. I'm thinking of, and then I also knew like the Hallelujah Chorus.
Okay.
All of those things. I still can hear off every note in my head, because that was the music that I grew up with. I was trying to think of one of those white Broadway shows my mother she listened to them over and over again. Okay. So it's in my African self, I still really know them. So anyway, when I came to
African self is broad, so that's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
It's broad.
So my African centered self. So when I came to New York in 1967, it was right in the middle of everything. One of the last things that I remember happening in Cincinnati before I left in People's Corner is like the equivalent to 125th Street, was the riots. So I had a step-grandfather who had a store, and he was very, very, very fair. And fair, as I use that term, he looked like he was white, actually. He's from Chicago, and he had a store, and he did not put Soul Brother in his window. If you all remember during the riots, for those who don't, during the riots of 67, and it was one of our first really big uprisings in my daytime, in my lifetime, the Black businesses would put Soul Brother or Soul in their window, and that way you wouldn't get broken into, or wouldn't be vandalized. And he had not done that, and was vandalized. And I remember being inside the store and the glasses being broken out, and it was people running up and down the street with Molotov cocktails. I remember that day. It's in 67, and it was after the big Detroit, all this started in Los Angeles and then moved through the country to all the major cities, Cincinnati being one of those, the major cities that had large concentrations of Black people. I digress. So we moved from Cincinnati in 1967. My mom spent a year here. Her best friend in high school, Bern Camp, had gotten a scholarship to Juilliard because he could play those big pipe organs that you play in church, the ones with the 50 pipes.
Yes.
And so he came here he got a scholarship to Juilliard and was here playing. And of course, his job was playing in the churches. He was the organist at St. Mark's Church there on 137th Street in Edgecombe, right? So he brought my mother in as his soloist. And I stayed back for 1 year in Cincinnati, and then I came here. I came in 67. She came in 66. Okay. And of course, I was scared to death. I couldn't understand what my mother was doing to us. I thought she had lost her mind. We lived in an 18-room house in Cincinnati, and we moved to 147th Street on a 5th floor walk-up with 3 rooms. So I was traumatized, and anyway, end up coming to Harlem, and during the daytime, I think I must have stayed in the house for 2 months. And then my uncle found that they were, this is the September of 67, the High School of Music and Art, which is now LaGuardia, had only 5% Black population. That's when they were on, before the downtown location. It was on where A. Philip Randolph, the building where A. Philip Randolph is, on 135th and Convent. And of course, riots had run through, and an uprising. I'm going to stop saying rising. I'm going to say uprising. Uprising had come through City College.
I like uprising. This is
I want to use that. That's what I want to use. So, the uprising had happened on City College's campus, and part of their demands was that they integrate more fully the High School of Music and Art, because there was only 5% Black students at the school at that time, and it's sitting in the middle of Harlem. Amen. So how are you going to have a school of music and art and only 5% of the population be African American or other, for that matter? And so it was Jewish, to the point where they had gefilte fish for lunch. So I'm just saying that's 1967. So the people in the city demanded that they let Harlem children in. So in September they auditioned, and a bunch of Harlem kids were then allowed to take the test, and I got in as a bass violinist at that point. All right. So that's how my journey started. Someplace along the line, I ran into African music, into African with Olatunji, and with some of the dancers. I ran into a sister on a bus that encouraged me to, because I always wanted to dance, but I always was a big girl. She encouraged me. I started, and that's where my journey started. I mean, we can go a little further. I don't want to co-opt all the time, but let's just say that those of you who know me as an African dancer, not as a bass violinist. Right. But,
we know you. This is Harlem Network News, and I'm Terri Wisdom, and this is Grandparents' Day Harlem style. Lest we not forget the brothers. I have grandmothers on here, but there are brothers who stand behind us, in front of us, and by our side. Okay, so salute, brothers. But today is the grandmothers talking. So we all have had quite amazing journeys, and at some point our lives coincided, and I think that children are the ones that actually in some instances have connected us. My children and Aissatou Bey-Grecia's children went to daycare together in Harlem, and I knew her children long before I knew her. Her daughter was one of the people that when I came to pick my children up, she was cartwheeling and spinning her dress. And her name was unique. Our children's names were unique. Her oldest daughter's name is Moji Sola. And our children at that time, because we grew up in the 60s to the 70s, I went to Lincoln University. I was there when Gil Scott-Heron was there. So we came through a lot of boundaries. So a lot of our children had African names, and some of the names were difficult even for me to pronounce, but the children all knew one another's names, and they would come home singing the names of the children. So that is how I knew her children's names. My children would come home and they would sing Moji Sola, Lemuria, Akhenaten. And that's how we connected through the children. And my story, I'm going to give it to Kanye. My story to her is even deeper because her son, Rashawn, who is now an ancestor, was a baseball player. And my son, Ali, was a baseball player. So I knew of Rashawn before I knew of Akake because my son, and he didn't reveal many people, but he was like, Rashawn can throw 50 miles an hour. And so I always heard stories of Rashawn. And then as a film person, I had the honor as a Black person, when they started the Harlem Little League again for the first time, they came to me to edit the piece. So I first met Akake and Rashawn on the air. I was editing a story about Harlem Little League and they were in it. And if anybody out in the world has a copy of that piece, or if it's in the archives, I would love to receive that. You can send it to harlemnetworknews.com or Harlem Network News at Gmail, but amazing. So tell us a little bit about your journey. And obviously we could keep this conversation going, but I know everybody has things to do. So we're gonna, begin to wind down and give a message of significance to our grandchildren that we want them to know. And obviously I know they'll be talking about us until day is long because we some different grandmas. So go right ahead, Akake.
Amen.
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 Given the time, I'm going to speak as briefly as possible. I came out of Detroit, Michigan. That's where I was born and partially reared. And you were talking about the riots, Aisatou. When the riots happened in Detroit, my parents had sent us to their friends in Poughkeepsie, New York, and my uncle for the summer. And my uncle was a Black Panther, and he also was a mathematician for IBM.
Okay.
And every time he got arrested, IBM bailed him out. He was like a big mathematician. So that's why he was in Poughkeepsie at the headquarters at IBM. So
such stories. Woo.
I know. So we were in Poughkeepsie during the summer and we looked on the TV, and that's when the riots started. And they were in Detroit, and our house was on the block that was on the TV at that moment with, what do you call the armored, the cannons facing down the street of our block in Detroit. Wow. And we were crying and screaming. We couldn't get my mother and father on the phone. And that was part of my entry into politics and civil rights and understanding what we were up against. So from a young child, my parents had taught us to speak up and out, no matter who it is. Just be respectful. And so as we grew and went back to Detroit and then went to move to Washington, D.C., as I began to see the problems in the Black community and understanding racism, because D.C. was predominantly Black and Detroit wasn't, but we were engrossed in all of the cultural activities of Detroit. And having music, we all played an instrument. I didn't play that well, but I played the clarinet. And my sister was brilliant. She played the violin, the viola, and the piano. Huh?
Which sister?
Robin, my sister. Okay. Robin. Yeah, wow, she's brilliant. She's like a genius, and she could play 4 instruments. Woo. But when we got to DC, they didn't have music and art in the schools like they did in Detroit. So in terms of what Aissatou was talking about with the Midwest and Ohio, music education and art education was a part of everything that we did. But when we got to DC, they didn't have all of that. They also had a lower level of education. And when I say lower level, my sister in the 10th grade, they were learning what she had learned in the 5th grade in Detroit.
Wow.
In DC. And it was predominantly Black. And my
but not equal.
Yes. So my wheels started turning in like, okay, we're in a world that is not fair to Black people. And we are not having equal education. Consequently, I started acting with the DC Black, no, it wasn't DC Black Repertory yet. I was auditioned to be in a program for theater, and at that program, at Workshops of Careers in the Arts in DC, they taught us about our history and our culture through poetry and theater and plays. And I had to do Harriet Tubman. And when I played her, and I was like, oh, we have to stand up all the time, and we have to be introducing our culture. We have to accept that we are Africans and that we have a history and that we are proud. And from that moment on, it was my mission in life to teach and educate about African culture and history. So by the time I got to Howard University, I learned about Zora Neale Hurston and storytelling and folklore. And I chose that to be a part of what I would do as an actress, to teach and educate others. So I started taking African dance classes. I learned spirituals and folklore music. And I learned a lot of stories from the African diaspora. And that became my mantra for life, that we are people, we come from somewhere, we didn't just arrive on these shores. Some people did come through Ellis Island, and some people did, but the majority of us were enslaved or come from descendants who were enslaved in this country. And we had a history and culture before then. And we have a history and culture now. All that we have developed and gained and put together and immersed between what we had before we came over here and what we developed here as African Americans in this country is an enormous treasure and gems for us and our people and our children. So everything I do, for the most part, has to do with encouraging, empowering, and elevating our culture and history everywhere it is, from the Caribbean to from Brazil, Haiti, Nigeria, Ghana, wherever we are, that it's all of ours and it's all a part of us. And so those are the things that I try to instill in our children, who accepted all of our children went to an African camp.
Yes. African heritage in camp.
With Baba Ajay and Watoto Shule. Anyway, they went away and they had to learn African dancing and drumming. They had to learn beading and tie-dyeing. They had to learn medicinal herbs. They had to learn how to survive. And they all were calling like, oh, they're starving us, because some of our children were vegetarians and some weren't. But they were vegetarians there. And we couldn't send things to them because, they were being trained on how to survive and how to live off of the land and be self-sufficient. And they fussed. They had to learn these African pledges. They fussed and cried and today, our children who are lawyers and principals of high schools and doctors and all different things utilize that African pledge from 40 years, well, they're not all 40, but from however many years ago, they still use those things, even though they complain, for the people that they serve and the people that they teach. So instilling African culture and history, or our culture, history, wherever you're from, is so important. Even though they push back, they remember and they will pass it on to their children for generations. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's
yeah, it's all a circle. And I'm Terri Wisdom. This is Harlem Network News, and let the circle be unbroken. This is National Grandparents Day, and this is National Grandparents Day in our way, in our culture. And we are.
I want to just say one thing.
Yes, Aissatou.
Yeah, the thing that I've noted, I mean, because our kids are 40, in their mid 40s or just before their 40s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our kids are, not the grandparents. The grandkids are, the next generation.
Yes, yes.
Some of these things that we instilled, our children just took as that's just how things go. I remember when my son, he moved to Texas, to Houston for a short period of time. And he said people were amazed that he had African statues and African masks in his house. They couldn't, it was just, like they couldn't fathom it, right? But he had grown up with all those things in his house and all those things in his life. For them to wrap, I watch when they pick up their gele or pick up their lapa. It's not with any, nothing. It's like second nature. I watch when Kwanzaa comes. These are all second nature. And they don't even know that they have, I think they're starting to get it now because they're older. They didn't know that these things were not commonplace. That I think that our plan was to change culture and to alter, how people were viewed, how Black people were viewed, and our traditions, and how they, they were used, and how they were, how they, had developed. And for the children that we raised, all of us on this call, we made African culture a part of our every part. And that was the object of the game. And for that reason, I know that we succeeded. And I'm proud of all of us, because we got the African-centered children that we asked for.
Yes. So, and it has, thank you so much, Aissatou Bey-Grecia. We can't see you, but we see your beautiful picture. And I thank you for that. Thank you so much. And you're muted now, but it's okay. But
I am going to have to say, fabulous. I'm going to have to say, see you later to all of my sisters. And I am so thankful that I have you guys in my life as a grandmother, and that you are who you are. And my journey and our journey as a family has included all the lessons that you all have helped to teach us as well and have shared with us. So I love you. Enjoy your day.
The Kwanzaa Collective lives. The Kwanzaa Collective lives.
Yes, the rights of passage lives. And we're gonna all wrap this up, because we could be on here like a clubhouse for 24 hours telling our stories. I know we could. This is Harlem Network News. So what I'd like you to do, and Kanke's gone, and I just want to salute her 7 grandchildren, and started with Raya and Russell and Ayan and Kayron and all of the twins. I want to really celebrate her 7 grandchildren, and I want to say their names. Sandra, say your grandchildren's names and the prayer you have for you. You say yours, Aissatou, and I'll say the prayers I have for mine, and we're going to close out, and we're going to keep moving and do what we do. Yes, okay. Sandra.
There's Ellis and Owie and Riley and Rocky.
Okay. And what's your prayer that you have for them, and the things that you would like for them to develop, and the relationships that you're cultivating?
I'd like them to remember the things that I've tried to instill in them, whether it's visual or by words, and that they will take it and use it. That's my prayer, not only for the grandkids, but the children too.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Don't ignore the words of your elders and your ancestors. Use them to help understand and live a good life.
Yes. And I would like to just send out a special blessing and prayer. Say your mom's name, because they have a great grandma and how old she is, and you know.
Yeah. Well, my mom, she's 97.
Okay. You just muted yourself.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
My mom, Elvira. Yes. Elvira is 97 years old.
You just
and we still celebrate her. And I want these children to know that they have a grandmother, because sometimes they ignore their great grandmothers, and to remember that they came from somewhere. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Aisatou, if you would share, and I see now you're in the beautiful blue sky and green trees, and you masking, doing what we got to do for the survival here. Please say your grandchildren's names and your great-grandchild's name and your wish for them, and a little bit about your mom. And you're muted, Aisatou. You're muted. Okay, we got you.
Okay, so that's Hannibal Kwesi. That's Zayani, Zwelinjani. And then that's Sky Sabria.
All right.
That's twins. I have twin girls as well. Okay. Olivia. I'm sorry, I have to do it in, Olivia, then Zoe. And I'm missing Elijah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Elijah. And then my great-granddaughter is Naila.
Okay.
Naila. And my wish for them is that they'll have love and eternal happiness and good health, and that they'll know always that they're from a great and mighty people.
Okay, thank you. And if you'd like to say a little bit about your mom, Mama Rashida. Yes.
The fabulous Mama Rashida.
Yes.
Diva for life.
Woo, woo. Snap them fingers. It's been a great journey with her. My mother and I, our journey started when she was 18, and it's been a good ride ever since. She's a genius, and her love and love for people and love for all things good is continuous. And I'm so happy and thankful that she's able to pass that on to the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren. Yes. And it's a great circle. So I'm going to have to walk into my thing. Much love and peace. Okay, much love and peace. And I will close out Harlem Network News by just saying the names of my grandchildren and my hope for them, and my oldest granddaughter, Sahar, and my next grandson, Sahar Sosi Selu Ani Gray, and my grandson, Messiah Bashir Samuel Ali Wisdom, and also London Lalibela Bess and Bryce Cairo Bess. Those are my grandchildren. And my hope for them is that they stay connected with the family, and they know the value of family, that they love, that they give back, that they understand that it takes a village, that they keep the culture, that they educate themselves, that they question what's around them, that they stand up, and that they know that they can persevere, and that we keep that connection, we keep that learning, that they value the history and the culture. And it's a blessing, and I pray for them daily. I work with them daily. Two of them are at our great Howard University. So stand firm, because I was thinking that our children had a lot to do when it was with COVID. It's just like wow, to have to deal with all of this. But I realized that in growing up, and I do want to share this, we dealt with much too. You know, as everybody talked about the uprisings, whether it was in Detroit or Ohio or Newark. I remember when the Newark uprising started, I was in Jersey, Roselle, New Jersey with my cousins. And we were supposed to go to Newark. We were so excited. And then the uprising came and we couldn't go. So we have endured much in our lives. In my high school and middle school years, junior high school, that's what we called it. We experienced 3-4 assassinations, from President Kennedy to Robert Kennedy to Dr. Martin Luther King to Malcolm X. You know, we experienced the Panther experience. Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. We went through many transitions. And my senior year, there was a school strike in New York City. We were out of school for 3 months. When I went to Lincoln University, it was the year of Kent State and Mississippi State, and they had to shut the school down because crosses were being burned on the campus. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, they told us, and school wasn't even over, it was April, they told us, get all your worldly possessions you could carry. If you live in California, you got to go with a friend, but you're going to get off this campus at 3 o'clock. And brothers that I went to school with, and some sisters, because it was mainly males, had been to Vietnam, and they were ready and they were armed. So they had to shut the school down. So we've gone through a lot. So I just want to say to all of my grandchildren, all of our grandchildren, stand firm. Though you're dealing with COVID, we've dealt with stuff too. And my mother and her generation and your generation, they dealt with the Great Depression. So you got to roll with what it is, and you got to stand, and we came across Middle Passage, so we got this. Sandra, unmute yourself and close it out with whatever it is you have to say in prayer and culture. This is Harlem Network News, and it's Grandparents' Day. And salute to all them brothers who have stood beside us and with us to raise these children, and the grandfathers who have done it, and the great-grandfathers who have done it.
Yes.
I salute my father, Wayman Terrell Duncan, who left us when I was 16. And I salute my stepfather, Harold Hamilton, who stood firm for my kids.
Yes.
So there we go.
Yes.
For my uncle.
Yes, indeed. Just want to, for all of us to give thanks to the Creator who created the fishes in the sea and the stars in the galaxy and us human beings, for us to be gratitude, give gratitude, live a life of gratitude, and many doors will be open. And we give thanks for everything, the good, the bad, the indifferent, because in each there's a lesson, and we cannot walk away without learning the lessons of each, because we will repeat it, and we want to live a good and healthy and rambunctious and gracious life. And so I say thank you very much, Terry, and all my sisters, Aissatou, all of them, and Rhonda, everybody. Thank you very much, and the fathers and grandfathers as well.
Yes, thank you. And every lesson is a blessing. This is Harlem Network News coming to you live. And I say to all of us, we are a resilient people, and we are still here. So goes Harlem, so goes the world. Have a blessed and prosperous day, everyone. Thank you.